Hey, hey, it's Ray Langley at your service, virtual entertainer and wolf girl extraordinaire. Welcome back to the Maltese Falcon. This is part 3 of a 4-part series, and today we're going to be reading chapters 11 to 15. I will be linking the story in the chat so that you guys can follow along. Welcome aboard. How is everyone today? Welcome into Illusory Singer, Army Productions, and Candace. Good to see you guys. Here's the story that you can follow along. Alright. So, a lot happened last time, and at the same time, not a lot of progress happened. A lot of interpersonal drama, which I suppose makes sense for the noir genre. Well, I suppose there was that fade to black moment. But aside from that, we are still no closer to getting that bird. Or any answers of any substance. So, yeah, we still don't know who killed who or why. So let's hope to get some light on some of that today. Let me go ahead and get some water before we start. As always, the little bit of a disclaimer that the voices are usually based entirely on vibes and may change from stream to stream. I don't always have a perfect memory of what the characters sound like, and sometimes they change with the situations. So if they do sound a little different, apologies in advance. But in any case, I hope that you enjoy the story. And I will do my best because my voice is still a little bit tired from last night's Ace Attorney stream. If you were there for that, you'll know exactly what a doozy that was. And if you weren't able to make it there, I do have the VOD of that up. It was quite a doozy. It went a little longer than I anticipated, but worth it. All right. Last 1 or 2 chapters were lovey-dovey slice of life. Yeah. Alright then, let's get started. Chapter 11. The Fat Man. The telephone bell was ringing when Spade returned to his office after sending Bridget O'Shaughnessy off to Effie Perrin's house. He went to the telephone.
Hello? Yes, this is Spade. Yes, I got it. I've been waiting to hear from you. Who? Mr. Gutman. Oh, yes, sure. Now, the sooner the better. 12C. Right. Say 15 minutes. Right.
Spade sat on the corner of his desk beside the telephone and rolled a cigarette. His mouth was a hard, complacent V. His eyes, watching his fingers make the cigarette, smoldered over lower lids drawn up straight. The door opened and Iva Archer came in. Spade said,
Hello, honey.
in a voice as lightly amiable as his face had suddenly become. "Oh, Sam, forgive me," she cried in a choked voice. She stood just inside the door, wadding a black-bordered handkerchief in her small gloved hands, peering into his face with frightened red and swollen eyes. He did not get up from his seat on the desk corner. He said,
Sure, that's all right. Forget it.
"But Sam," she wailed, "I sent those policemen there. I was mad, crazy with jealousy, and I phoned them that if they go there, they learn about something about Miles' murder.
What made you think that?
Oh, I didn't. But I was mad, Sam, and I wanted to hurt you.
Made things damned awkward.
He put his arm around her and drew her nearer.
But it's all right now. Only don't get any more crazy notions like that.
I won't, she promised. Ever. But you weren't nice to me last night. You were cold and distant and wanted to get rid of me when I had come down there and waited so long to warn you. And you...
Warn me? About what?
About Phil. He's found out about you being in love with me, and Miles had told him about my wanting a divorce. Though of course he never knew what for. And now Phil thinks you killed his brother because he wouldn't give me the divorce so we could get married. He told me he believed that, and yesterday he went and told the police.
That's nice,
Spade said softly.
And you came to warn me. Because I was busy, you got up on your ear and helped this damn Phil Archer stir things up.
I'm sorry, she whimpered. I know you won't forgive me. I'm sorry.
You ought to be,
he agreed.
On your own account as well as mine. Has Dundee been to see you since Phil did his talking? Or anybody from the Bureau?
No. Alarm opened her eyes and mouth.
They will,
he said.
And it'd be just as well to not let them find you here. Did you tell them who you were when you phoned?
Oh, no. I simply told them that if they go up to your apartment right away, they learned something about the murder and hung up.
Where'd you phone from?
The drugstore up above your place. Oh, Sam, dearest, He patted her shoulder and said pleasantly,
It was a dumb trick, all right, but it's done now. You'd better run along home and think up things to tell the police. You'll be hearing from them. Maybe it'd be best to say no right across the board.
He frowned at something distant.
Or maybe you'd better see Sid Wise first.
He removed his arm from around her, took a card out of his pocket, scribbled 3 lines on its back, and gave it to her.
You can tell Sid everything.
He frowned.
Or almost everything. Where were you the night Miles was shot?
Home, she replied without hesitating. He shook his head, grinning at her. I was, she insisted.
No,
he said.
But if that's your story, it's all right with me. Go see Sid. It's up on the next corner, the pinkish building, room 827.
Her blue eyes tried to probe his yellow-gray ones. What makes you think I wasn't home? She asked slowly.
Nothing except that I know you weren't.
But I was! Her lips twisted and anger darkened her eyes. Effie Perrin told you that, she said indignantly. I saw her looking at my clothes and snooping around. You know she doesn't like me, Sam. Why do you believe things she tells you when you know she'd do anything to make trouble for me?
Jesus, you women,
Spade said mildly. He looked at the watch on his wrist.
You'll have to trot along, precious. I'm late for an appointment now. You do what you want, but if I were you, I'd tell Sid the truth, or nothing. I mean, leave out the parts you don't want to tell him, but don't make up anything to take its place.
I'm not lying to you, Sam, she protested.
Like hell you're not,
he said and stood up. She strained on tiptoe to hold her face nearer his. You don't believe me? She whispered.
I don't believe you.
And you won't forgive me for what I did?
Sure I do.
He bent his head and kissed her mouth.
That's all right. Now run along.
She put her arms around him. Won't you go with me to see Mr. Wise?
I can't, and I'd only be in the way.
He patted her arms, took them from around his body, and kissed her left wrist between glove and sleeve. He put his hands on her shoulders, turned her to face the door, and released her with a little push.
Beat it,
he ordered. The mahogany door of Suite 12C at the Alexandria Hotel was opened by the boy Spade had talked to in the Belvedere lobby. Spade said,
Hello?
Good-naturedly. The boy did not say anything. He stood aside, holding the door open. Spade went in. A fat man came to meet him. The fat man was flabbily fat with bulbous pink cheeks and lips and chins and neck, with a great soft egg of a belly that was all his torso, and pendant cones for arms and legs. As he advanced to meet Spade, all his bulbs rose and shook and fell separately with each step, in the manner of clustered soap bubbles not yet released from the pipe through which they had been blown. His eyes, made small by puffs around them, were dark and sleek. Dark ringlets thinly covered his broad scalp. He wore a black cutaway coat, black vest, black satin ascot tie holding a pinkish pearl, striped gray worsted trousers, and patent leather shoes. His voice was a throaty purr.
"Ah, Mr. Spade,"
he said with enthusiasm, and held out a hand like a fat pink star. Spade took the hand and smiled and said,
"How do you do, Mr. Gutman?"
Holding Spade's hand, the fat man turned beside him, put his other hand to Spade's elbow, and guided him across a green rug to a green plush chair beside a table that held a siphon, some glasses, and a bottle of Johnny Walker whiskey on a tray, a box of cigars, Coronas del Ritz, 2 newspapers, and a small and plain yellow soapstone box. Spade sat in the green chair. The fat man began to fill 2 glasses from bottle and siphon. The boy had disappeared. Doors set in 3 of the room's walls were shut. The 4th wall, behind Spade, was pierced by 2 windows looking out over Geary Street.
"We begin well, sir,"
the fat man purred, turning with a proffered glass in his hand.
"I distrust a man that says when. If he's got to be careful not to drink too much, it's because he's not to be trusted when he does."
Spade took the glass and, smiling, made the beginning of a bow over it. The fat man raised his glass and held it against a window's light. He nodded approvingly at the bubbles running up in it. He said,
"Well, sir, here's to plain speaking and clear understanding."
They drank and lowered their glasses. The fat man looked shrewdly at Spade and asked,
"You're a closed-mouthed man."
Spade shook his head.
"I like to talk." "Better and better,"
the fat man exclaimed.
"I distrust a closed-mouthed man. He generally picks the wrong time to talk and says the wrong things. Talking's something you can't do judiciously unless you keep in practice."
He beamed over his glass.
"We'll get along, sir, that we will."
He set his glass on the table and held the box of Coronas del Ritz out to Spade.
"A cigar, sir."
Spade took a cigar, trimmed the end of it, and lighted it. Meanwhile, the fat man pulled another green plush chair around to face Spade's, within convenient distance, and placed a smoking stand within reach of both chairs. Then he took his glass from the table, took a cigar from the box, and lowered himself into his chair. His bulbs stopped jouncing and settled into flabby rest. He sighed comfortably and said,
"Now, sir, we'll talk if you like, and I'll tell you right out that I'm a man who likes talking to a man that likes to talk." "Swell. Will we talk about the blackbird?"
The fat man laughed, and his bulbs rode up and down on his laughter.
"Will we?" he asked, and "We will,"
he replied. His pink face was shiny with delight.
"You're the man for me, sir, a man cut along my own lines. No beating about the bush, but right to the point. Will we talk about the blackbird? We will. I like that, sir. I like that way of doing business. Let us talk about the blackbird by all means, but first, sir, answer me a question, please, though maybe it's an unnecessary one, so we'll understand each other from the beginning. You're here as Miss O'Shaughnessy's representative?"
Spade blew smoke above the fat man's head in a long, slanting plume. He frowned thoughtfully at the ash-tipped end of his cigar. He replied deliberately,
"I can't say yes or no. There's nothing certain about it either way yet."
He looked up at the fat man and stopped frowning.
"It depends." "It depends on?"
Spade shook his head.
"If I knew what it depends on, I could say yes or no."
The fat man took a mouthful from his glass, swallowed it, and suggested,
Maybe it depends on Joe Cairo.
Spade's prompt
Maybe.
was noncommittal. He drank. The fat man leaned forward until his belly stopped him. His smile was ingratiating, and so was his purring voice.
You could say, then, that the question is which one of them you'll represent. You could put it that way. It will be one or the other. I didn't say that.
The fat man's eyes glistened. His voice sank through a throaty whisper, asking,
Who else is there?
Spade pointed his cigar at his own chest.
There's me,
he said. The fat man sank back in his chair and let his body go flaccid. He blew his breath out in a long, contented gust.
That's wonderful, sir, he purred. That's wonderful. I do like a man that tells you right out he's looking out for himself. Don't we all? I don't trust a man that says he's not, and the man that's telling the truth when he says he's not, I distrust most of all, because he's an ass, and an ass that's going contrary to the laws of nature.
Spade exhaled smoke. His face was politely attentive. He said,
Uh-huh. Now let's talk about the blackbird.
The fat man smiled benevolently.
Let's,
he said. He squinted so that fat puffs crowding together left nothing of his eyes but a dark gleam visible.
Mr. Spade, have you any conception of how much money can be made out of that blackbird? No.
The fat man leaned forward again and put a bloated pink hand on the arm of Spade's chair.
Well, sir, if I told you, by God, if I told you half, you'd call me a liar.
Spade smiled.
No,
he said.
Not even if I thought it. But if you won't take the risk, just tell me what it is, and I'll figure out the profits.
The fat man laughed.
You couldn't do that, sir. Nobody could do it that hasn't had a world of experience with things of that sort, and...
He paused impressively.
There aren't any other things of that sort.
His bulbs jostled one another as he laughed again. He stopped laughing abruptly. His fleshy lips hung open as laughter had left them. He stared at Spade with an intentness that suggested myopia. He asked,
You mean you don't know what it is?
Amazement took the throatiness out of his voice. Spade made a careless gesture with his cigar.
Nah, hell.
He said lightly.
I know what it's supposed to look like. I know the value in life you people put on it. I don't know what it is. She didn't tell you, Miss O'Shaughnessy. Yes, a lovely girl, sir. Uh-huh. No.
The fat man's eyes were dark gleams in ambush behind pink puffs of flesh. He said indistinctly,
She must know.
And
Cairo didn't either. Cairo's cagey. He's willing to buy it, but he won't risk telling me anything I don't know already.
The fat man moistened his lips with his tongue.
How much is he willing to buy it for?
He asked.
$10,000.
The fat man laughed scornfully.
$10,000, and dollars, mind you, not even pounds. That's the Greek for you. And what did you say to that? I said if I turned it over to him, I'd expect the $10,000. Ah, yes, if. Nicely put, sir.
The fat man's forehead squirmed in a flesh-blurred frown.
They must know,
he said only partly aloud. Then,
do they? Do they know what the bird is, sir? What was your impression? Can't help you there,
Spade confessed.
Not much to go by. Cairo didn't say he did, and he didn't say he didn't. She said she didn't, but I took it for granted that she was lying. That was not an injudicious thing to do,
the fat man said, but his mind was obviously not on his words. He scratched his head. He frowned until his forehead was marked by raw red creases. He fidgeted in his chair as much as his size and the size of the chair permitted fidgeting. He shut his eyes, opened them suddenly wide, and said to Spade,
Maybe they don't.
His bulbous pink face slowly lost its worried frown and then, more quickly, took on an expression of ineffable happiness.
If they don't, he cried, and again, if they don't, I'm the only one in the whole wide, sweet world who does.
Spade drew his lips back in a tight smile.
I'm glad I came to the right place,
he said. The fat man smiled too, but somewhat vaguely. Happiness had gone out of his face, though he continued to smile, and caution had come into his eyes. His face was a watchful-eyed, smiling mask held up between his thoughts and Spade. His eyes, avoiding Spade's, shifted to the glass at Spade's elbow. His face brightened.
By God, sir,
he said.
Your glass is empty.
He got up and went to the table and clattered glasses and siphon and bottle, mixing 2 drinks. Spade was immobile in his chair until the fat man, with a flourish and a bow and a jocular,
"Ah, sir, this kind of medicine will never hurt you,"
had handed him his refilled glass. Then Spade rose and stood close to the fat man, looking down at him, and Spade's eyes were hard and bright. He raised his glass. His voice was deliberate, challenging.
Here's to plain speaking and clear understanding.
The fat man chuckled and they drank. The fat man sat down. He held his glass against his belly with both hands and smiled up at Spade. He said,
"Well, sir, it's surprising, but it may well be a fact that neither of them does know exactly what that bird is, and that nobody in all this whole wide, sweet world knows what it is, saving and excepting only your humble servant, Caspar Gutman, Esquire."
Swell. Spade stood with legs apart, one hand in his trouser pocket, the other holding his glass.
When you've told me there'll only be 2 of us who know. Mathematically correct, sir.
The fat man's eyes twinkled.
But
his smile spread.
I don't know for certain that I'm going to tell you.
Don't be a damned fool, Spade said patiently.
You know what it is. I know where it is. That's why we're here. Well, sir, where is it?
Spade ignored the question. The fat man bunched his lips, raised his eyebrows, and cocked his head a little to the left.
You see, he said blandly, I must tell you what I know, but you will not tell me what you know. That is hardly equitable, sir. No, no, I do not think we can do business along those lines.
Spade's face became pale and hard. He spoke rapidly in a low, furious voice.
Think again and think fast. I told that punk of yours that you'd have to talk to me before you got through. I'll tell you now that you'll do your talking today or you are through. What are you wasting my time for? You and your lousy secret. Christ, I know exactly what that stuff is that they keep in the sub-treasury vaults, but what good does that do me? I can get along without you. God damn you. Maybe you could have got along without me if you kept clear of me. You can't now. Not in San Francisco. You'll come in or you'll get out, and you'll do it today.
He turned and with angry heedlessness tossed his glass at the table. The glass struck the wood, burst apart, and splashed its contents and glittering fragments over the table and floor. Spade, deaf and blind to the crash, wheeled to confront the fat man again. The fat man paid no more attention to the glass's fate than Spade did. Lips pursed, eyebrows raised, head cocked a little to the left, he had maintained his pink-faced blandness throughout Spade's angry speech, and maintained it now. Spade, still furious, said,
And another thing, I don't want...
The door to Spade's left opened. The boy who had admitted Spade came in. He shut the door, stood in front of it with his hands flat against his flanks, and looked at Spade. The boy's eyes were wide open and dark with wide pupils. Their gaze ran over Spade's body from shoulders to knees and up again to settle on the handkerchief, whose maroon border peeped from the breast pocket of Spade's brown coat.
Another thing,
Spade repeated, glaring at the boy.
Keep that gun cell away from me while you're making up your mind. I'll kill him. I don't like him. He makes me nervous. I'll kill him the first time he gets in my way. I won't give him an even break. I won't give him a chance. I'll kill him.
The boy's lips twitched in a shadowy smile. He neither raised his eyes nor spoke. The fat man said tolerantly,
Well, sir, I must say you have a most violent temper. Temper.
Spade laughed crazily. He crossed to the chair on which he had dropped his hat, picked up the hat, and set it on his head. He held out a long arm that ended in a thick forefinger pointing at the fat man's belly. His angry voice filled the room.
Think it over, and think like hell. You've got till 5:30 to do it in. Then you're either in or out, for keeps.
He let his arm drop, scowled at the bland fat man for a moment, scowled at the boy, and went to the door through which he had entered. When he opened the door, he turned and said harshly,
5:30, then the curtain.
The boy, staring at Spade's chest, repeated the two words he had twice spoken in the Belvedere lobby. His voice was not loud, it was bitter. Spade went out and slammed the door. End of chapter 11. By the way, for those who can't place it, I'm pretty sure the two words that can't be written down at this time, in this time period, was fuck you. Chapter 12. Merry-Go-Round. Spade rode down from Gutman's floor in an elevator. His lips were dry and rough in a face otherwise pale and damp. When he took out his handkerchief to wipe his face, he saw his hand trembling. He grinned at it and said, "Phew," so loudly that the elevator operator turned his head over his shoulder and asked, "Sir?" Spade walked down Geary Street to the Palace Hotel, where he ate luncheon. His face had lost its pallor, his lips their dryness, and his hand its trembling by the time he had sat down. He ate hungrily without haste, and then went to Sid Wise's office. When Spade entered, Wise was biting a fingernail and staring at the window. He took his hand from his mouth, screwed his chair around to face Spade, and said, "Lo, push a chair up." Spade moved a chair to the side of the big paper-laden desk and sat down.
Mrs. Archer come in?
He asked. Yes. The faintest of lights flickered in Wise's eyes. Going to marry the lady, Sammy? Spade sighed irritably through his nose.
Christ, now you start that,
he grumbled. A brief, tired smile lifted the corners of the lawyer's mouth. If you don't, he said, you're going to have a job on your hands. Spade looked up from the cigarette he was making and spoke sourly.
You mean you are? Oh, that's what you're for. What did she tell you?
About you.
About anything I ought to know.
Wise ran fingers through his hair, sprinkling dandruff down on his shoulders. She told me she had tried to get the divorce from Miles so she could... I know all that. Spade interrupted him.
You can skip it. Get to the part I don't know.
How do I know how much she...
Quit stalling, Sid.
Spade held the flame of his lighter to the end of his cigarette.
What did she tell you that she wanted kept from me?
Wise looked reprovingly at Spade. Now, Sammy, he began. That's not... Spade looked heavenward at the ceiling and groaned.
Dear God, he's my own lawyer that got rich off me, and I have to get down on my knees and beg him to tell me things.
He lowered at Wise.
What in hell do you think I sent her to you for?
Wise made a weary grimace. Just one more client like you, he complained, and I'd be in a sanitarium or San Quentin.
You'd be with most of your clients. Did she tell you where she was the night he was killed?
Yes.
Where?
Following him. Spade sat up straight and blinked. He exclaimed incredulously, Jesus, these women! Then he laughed, relaxed, and asked,
Well, what did she see?
Wise shook his head. Nothing much. When he came home for dinner that evening, he told her he had a date with a girl at the St. Mark, ragging her, telling her that was her chance to get the divorce she wanted. She thought at first he was just trying to get under her skin. He knew...
I know the family history,
Spade said.
Skip it. Tell me what she did.
I will if you'll give me a chance. After he had gone out, she began to think that maybe he might have had that date. You know Miles. It would have been like him to. You can skip Miles's character, too. I oughtn't to tell you a damn thing, the lawyer said. So she got their car from the garage and drove down to the St. Mark, sitting in the car across the street. She saw him come out of the hotel, and she saw that he was shadowing a man and a girl. She says she saw the same girl with you last night, who had come out just ahead of him. She knew then that he was working, had been kidding her. I suppose she was disappointed and mad. She sounded that way when she told me about it. She followed Miles long enough to make sure he was shadowing the pair, and then she went up to your apartment. You weren't home.
What time was that?
Spade asked. When she got to your place between 9:30 and 10 the first time.
The first time?
Yes, she drove around for half an hour or so and then tried again. That would make it, say, 10:30. You were still out, so she drove back downtown and went to a movie to kill time until after midnight, when she thought she'd be more likely to find you in. Spade frowned.
She went to a movie at 10:30.
So she says. The one on Powell Street that stays open till 1 in the morning. She didn't want to go home, she said, because she didn't want to be there when Miles came. That always made him mad, it seems, especially if it was around midnight. She stayed in the movie till it closed. Wise's words came out slower now, and there was a sardonic glint in his eyes. She said she had decided by then not to go back to your place again. She said she didn't know whether you'd like having her drop in that late. So she went to Tate's, the one on Ellis Street, had something to eat, and then went home alone. Wise rocked back in his chair and waited for Spade to speak. Spade's face was expressionless. He asked,
You believe her?
Don't you? Wise replied.
How do I know? How do I know it isn't something you fixed up between you to tell me?
Wise smiled. You don't cash many checks for strangers, do you, Sammy?
Not basketfuls. Well, what then? Miles wasn't home. It was at least 2 o'clock by then. Must have been, and he was dead.
Miles wasn't home, Wise said. That seems to have made her mad again, his not being home first to be made mad by her not being home, so she took the car out of the garage again and went back to your place.
And I wasn't home. I was down looking at Miles's corpse. Jesus, what a swell lot of merry-go-round riding. Then what?
She went home, and her husband still wasn't there, and while she was undressing, your messenger came with the news of his death. Spade didn't speak until he had, with great care, rolled and lighted another cigarette. Then he said,
I think that's an all right spread. Seems to click with most of the known facts. It ought to hold.
Wise's fingers, running through his hair again, combed more dandruff down on his shoulders. He studied Spade's face with curious eyes and asked, But you don't believe it? Spade plucked his cigarette from between his lips.
I don't believe it or disbelieve it, Sid. I don't know a damn thing about it.
A wry smile twisted the lawyer's mouth. He moved his shoulders wearily and said, That's right, I'm selling you out. Why don't you get an honest lawyer, one you can trust?
That fellow's dead.
Spade stood up. He sneered at Wise.
Getting touchy, huh? I haven't got enough to think about. Now I've got to remember to be polite to you. What did I do? Forget to genuflect when I came in?
Sid Wise smiled sheepishly. You're a son of a gun, Sammy, he said. Effie Perrin was standing in the center of Spade's outer office when he entered. She looked at him with worried brown eyes and asked, What happened? Spade's face grew stiff.
What happened where?
He demanded. Why didn't she come? Spade took 2 long steps and caught Effie Perrin by the shoulders.
She didn't get there?
He bawled into her frightened face. She shook her head violently from side to side. I waited, and she didn't come, and I couldn't get you on the phone, so I came down. Spade jerked his hands away from her shoulders, thrust them far down in his trousers pockets, and said, Another merry-go-round, in a loud, enraged voice, and strode into his private office. He came out again.
Phone your mother, he commanded. See if she's come yet.
He walked up and down the office while the girl used the telephone. No, she said when she had finished. Did you send her out in a taxi? His grunt probably meant yes. Are you sure somebody must have followed her? Spade stopped pacing the floor. He put his hands on his hips and glared at the girl. He addressed her in a loud, savage voice.
Nobody followed her. Do you think I'm a goddamn schoolboy? I made sure of it before I put her in the cab. I rode a dozen blocks with her to be more sure, and I checked her another half dozen blocks before I got out.
Well, but
she didn't get there. You've told me that. I believe it. Do you think I think she did get there?
Effie Perrin sniffed. You certainly act like a goddamn schoolboy, she said. Spade made a harsh noise in his throat and went to the corridor door.
I'm going out and find her, if I have to dig up sewers, he said. Stay here till I'm back, or you hear from me. For Christ's sake, let's do something right.
He went out, walked half the distance to the elevators, and retraced his steps. Effie Perrin was sitting at her desk when he opened the door. He said,
You ought to know better than to pay any attention to me when I talk like that.
If I pay any attention to you, you're crazy, she replied. Only... She crossed her arms and felt her shoulders, and her mouth twitched uncertainly. I won't be able to wear an evening gown for 2 weeks, you big brute.
He grinned humbly, said, I'm no damn good, darling, made an exaggerated bow, and went out again.
2 yellow taxicabs were at the corner stand to which Spade went. Their chauffeurs were standing together talking. Spade asked,
Where's the red-faced blonde driver that was here at noon?
Got a load, one of the chauffeurs said.
Will he be back here?
I guess so. The other chauffeur ducked his head to the east.
Here he comes now.
Spade walked down to the corner and stood by the curb until the red-faced blonde chauffeur had parked his cab and got out. Then Spade went up to him and said,
I got into your cab with a lady at noontime. We went out Stockton Street and up Sacramento to Jones, where I got out.
Sure, the red-faced man said. I remember that.
I told you to take her to the 9th Avenue number. You didn't take her there. Where did you take her?
The chauffeur rubbed his cheek with a grimy hand and looked doubtfully at Spade. Well, I don't know about this.
It's all right,
Spade assured him, giving him one of his cards.
If you want to play safe, though, we can ride up to your office and get your superintendent's okay.
I guess it's all right. I took her to the ferry building.
By herself?
Yeah, sure.
Didn't take her anywhere else first?
No, it was like this. After we dropped you, I went out on Sacramento, and when we got to Polk, she rapped on the glass and said she wanted to get a newspaper. So I stopped at the corner and whistled for a kid, and she got a paper.
Which paper?
The Call. Then I went out on Sacramento some more, and just after we crossed Van Ness, she knocked on the glass again and said take her to the ferry building.
Was she excited or anything?
Not so as I noticed.
And when you got to the ferry building?
She paid me off, and that was all.
Anybody waiting for her there?
I didn't see them if they was.
Which way did she go?
At the ferry? I don't know. Maybe upstairs or toward the stairs?
Take the newspaper with her?
Yeah, she had it tucked under her arm when she paid me.
With the pink sheet outside or one of the white?
Hell, Cap, I don't remember that. Spade thanked the chauffeur, said,
Get yourself a smoke,
and gave him a silver $1. Spade bought a copy of The Call and carried it into an office building vestibule to examine it out of the wind. His eyes ran swiftly over the front page headlines and over those on the second and third pages. They paused for a moment under Suspect Arrested as Counterfeiter on the 4th page, and again on page 5 under Bay Youth Seeks Death with Bullet. Pages 6 and 7 held nothing of it to interest him. On 8, 3 boys arrested as SF burglars after shooting held his attention for a moment, and after that nothing until he reached the 35th page, which held news of the weather, shipping, produce, finance, divorce, births, marriage, and deaths. He read a list of dead, passed over pages 36 and 37 financial news, found nothing to stop his eyes on the 38th and last page, sighed, folded the newspaper, put it in his coat pocket, and rolled a cigarette. For 5 minutes he stood there in the office building vestibule, smoking and staring sulkily at nothing. Then he went up to Stockton Street, hailed a taxicab, and had himself driven to the Coronet. He let himself into the building and into Bridget O'Shaughnessy's apartment with the key she had given him. The blue gown she had worn the previous night was hanging across the foot of her bed. Her blue stockings and slippers were on the bedroom floor. The polychrome box that had held jewelry in her dressing table drawer now stood empty on the dressing table top. Spade frowned at it, ran his tongue across his lips, strolled through the rooms, looking around but not touching anything, then left the Coronet and went downtown again. In the doorway at Spade's office building, he came face to face with the boy he had left at Gutman's. The boy put himself in Spade's path, blocking the entrance, and said, "Come on, he wants to see you." The boy's hands were in his overcoat pockets. His pockets bulged more than his hands need have made them bulge. Spade grinned and said mockingly, "I didn't expect you till 5:25. Hope I haven't kept you waiting." The boy raised his eyes to Spade's mouth and spoke in the strained voice of one in physical pain. "Keep on riding me and you're gonna be picking iron out of your navel." Spade chuckled. "The cheaper the crook, the gaudier the patter," he said cheerfully. "Well, let's go." They walked up Sutter Street side by side. The boy kept his hands in his overcoat pockets. They walked a little more than a block in silence. Then Spade asked pleasantly, "How long have you been off the gooseberry lay, son?" The boy did not show he had heard the question. "Did you ever—" Spade began and stopped. A soft light began to glow in his yellowish eyes. He did not address the boy again. They went into the Alexandria, rode up to the 12th floor, and walked down the corridor towards Gutman's suite. Nobody else was in the corridor. Spade lagged a little, so that when they were within 15 feet of Gutman's door, he was perhaps a foot and a half behind the boy. He leaned sidewise suddenly and grasped the boy from behind by both arms, just beneath the elbows. He forced the boy's arms forward so that the boy's hands, in his overcoat pockets, lifted the overcoat up before him. The boy struggled and squirmed, but he was impotent in the big man's grip. The boy kicked back, but his feet went between Spade's spread legs. Spade lifted the boy straight up from the floor and brought him down hard on his feet again. The impact made little noise on the thick carpet. At the moment of impact, Spade's hand slid down and got a fresh grip on the boy's wrists. The boy, teeth set hard together, did not stop straining against the man's big hands, but he could not tear himself loose, could not keep the man's hands from crawling down over his own hands. The boy's teeth ground together audibly, making a noise that mingled with the noise of Spade's breathing as Spade crushed the boy's hands. They were tense and motionless for a long moment. Then the boy's arms became limp. Spade released the boy and stepped back. In each of Spade's hands, when they came out of the boy's overcoat pockets, there was a heavy automatic pistol. The boy turned and faced Spade. The boy's face was a ghastly white blank. He kept his hands in his overcoat pockets. He looked at Spade's chest and did not say anything. Spade put the pistols in his own pockets and grinned derisively. "Come on," he said. "This will put you in solid with your boss." They went to Gutman's door, and Spade knocked. End of chapter 12. And for those of you counting, in the space of 2 chapters so far today, Spade has rolled 4 cigarettes and taken 2 alcoholic drinks. For those of you playing the drinking game, please play responsibly. And now we have had a brief violent altercation. Chapter 13. The Emperor's Gift. All the same day, by the way, yeah. Okay. Gutman opened the door. A glad smile lighted his fat face. He held out a hand and said,
Come in, sir. Thank you for coming. Come in."
Spade shook the hand and entered. The boy went in behind him. The fat man shut the door. Spade took the boy's pistols from his pockets and held them out to Gutman.
"Here, you shouldn't let him run around with these. He'll get himself hurt."
The fat man laughed merrily and took the pistols.
Well, well, he said. What's this?
He looked from Spade to the boy. Spade said,
A crippled newsie took them away from him, but I made him give them back.
The white-faced boy took the pistols out of Gutman's hands and pocketed them. The boy did not speak. Gutman laughed again.
By gad, sir, he told Spade. You're a chap worth knowing. An amazing character. Come in. Sit down. Give me your hat.
The boy left the room by the door to the right of the entrance. The fat man installed Spade in a green plush chair by the table, pressed a cigar upon him, held a light to it, mixed whiskey and carbonated water, put one glass in Spade's hand, and holding the other, sat down facing Spade.
Now, sir, he said, I hope you'll let me apologize for... Never mind that, Spade said. Let's talk about the black bird.
The fat man cocked his head to the left and regarded Spade with fond eyes.
All right, sir,
he agreed.
Let's.
He took a sip from the glass in his hand.
This is going to be the most astounding thing you've ever heard of, sir, and I say that knowing that a man of your caliber in your profession must have known some astounding things in his time.
Spade nodded politely. The fat man screwed up his eyes and asked,
What do you know, sir, about the Order of the Hospital of St. John of Jerusalem, later called the Knights of Rhodes, and other things?
Spade waved his cigar.
Not much, only what I remember from history in school. Crusaders or something. Very good. Now you don't remember that Suleiman the Magnificent chased them out of Rhodes in 1523? No. Well, sir, he did, and they settled in Crete, and they stayed there for 7 years, until 1530, when they persuaded the Emperor Charles V to give them...
Gutman held up 3 puffy fingers and counted them.
Malta, Gozo, and Tripoli. Yes? Yes, sir, but with these conditions, they were to pay the Emperor each year the tribute of 1...
He held up a finger.
Falcon, in acknowledgement that Malta was still under Spain, and if they ever left the island, it was to revert to Spain. Understand? It was giving it to them, but not unless they used it, and they couldn't give or sell it to anybody else. Yes.
The fat man looked over his shoulders at the 3 closed doors, hunched his chair a few inches nearer Spade's, and reduced his voice to a husky whisper.
Have you any conception of the extreme, immeasurable wealth of the order at that time? If I remember,
Spade said,
they were pretty well fixed.
Gutman smiled indulgently.
Pretty well, sir, is putting it mildly.
His whisper became lower and more purring.
They were rolling in wealth, sir. You've no idea. None of us has any idea. For years they had preyed on the Saracens, had taken nobody knows what spoils of gems, precious metals, silks, ivories, the cream of the East. That is history, sir. We all know that the holy wars to them as to the Templars were largely a matter of loot. Well now, the Emperor Charles had given them Malta, and all the rent he asked is 1 insignificant bird per annum, just as a matter of form. What could be more natural than for these immeasurably wealthy knights to look around for some way of expressing their gratitude? Well, sir, that's exactly what they did, and they hit on the happy thought of sending Charles, for the first year's tribute, not an insignificant live bird, but a glorious golden falcon encrusted from head to foot with the finest jewels in their coffers. And remember, sir, they had fine ones, the finest out of Asia.
Gutman stopped whispering. His sleek dark eyes examined Spade's face, which was placid. The fat man asked,
Well, sir, what do you think of that?
I don't know. The fat man smiled complacently.
These are facts, historical facts, not schoolbook history, not Mr. Wells's history, but history nevertheless. He leaned forward. The archives of the order from the 12th century on are still at Malta. They are not intact, but what is there holds no less than three. He held up three fingers, references that can't be to anything else but this jeweled falcon. In J. Delaville Leroux's Les Archives de l'Ordre de Saint-Jean, there is a reference to it, oblique to be sure, but a reference still, and the unpublished, because unfinished at the time of his death, supplement to Pauli's Dell'origine et Istituto del Sacro Militare Ordine, has a clear and unmistakable statement of the facts I am telling you.
All right, Spade said.
All right, sir. Grandmaster Villiers de l'Isle d'Adam had this foot-high jeweled bird made by Turkish slaves in the castle of St. Angelo and sent it to Charles, who was in Spain. He sent it in a galley commanded by a French knight named Cormier or Corvair, a member of the order.
His voice dropped to a whisper again.
It never reached Spain.
He smiled with compressed lips and asked,
You know of Barbarossa, Redbeard, Carradine? No? A famous admiral of buccaneers sailing out of Algiers then? Well, sir, he took the knight's galley and he took the bird. The bird went to Algiers. That's a fact. That's a fact that the French historian Pierre Dan put in one of his letters from Algiers. He wrote that the bird had been there for more than 100 years, until it was carried away by Sir Francis Verney, the English adventurer who was with the Algerian buccaneers for a while. Maybe it wasn't, but Pierre Dan believed it was, and that's good enough for me. There's nothing said about the bird in Lady Frances Verney's memoirs of the Verney family during the 17th century. To be sure, I looked, and it's pretty certain that Sir Francis didn't have the bird when he died in a Messina hospital in 1615. He was stony broke. But, sir, there's no denying that the bird did go to Sicily. It was there, and it came into the possession there of Victor Amadeus II, some time after he became king in 1713. And it was one of his gifts to his wife when he married in Chambéry after abdicating. That is a fact, sir. Caruti, the author of Storia del Regno de Vittorio Amadeo II, himself vouched for it. Maybe they, Amadeo and his wife, took it along with them to Turin when they tried to revoke his abdication. Be that as it may, it turned up next in the possession of a Spaniard who had been with the army that took Napoli in 1734, the father of Don Jose Monino y Redondo, Count of Floridablanca, who was Charles III's chief minister. There's nothing to show that it didn't stay in that family until at least the end of the Carlist War in 40. Then it appeared in Paris at just about the time that Paris was full of Carlists who had had to get out of Spain. One of them must have brought it with him, but whoever he was, it's likely he knew nothing about its real value. It had been, no doubt, as a precaution during the Carlist trouble in Spain, painted or enameled over to look nothing more than a fairly interesting black statuette. And in that disguise, sir, it was, you might say, kicked around Paris for 70 years by private owners and dealers too stupid to see what it was under the skin.
The fat man paused to smile and shake his head regretfully. Then he went on.
For 70 years, sir, this marvelous item was, as you might say, a football in the gutters of Paris, until 1911, when a Greek dealer named Charalaus Constantinos Found it in an obscure shop. It didn't take Carolaus long to learn what it was and to acquire it. No thickness of enamel could conceal value from his eyes and nose. Well, sir, Carolaus was the man who traced most of its history and who identified it as what it actually was. I got wind of it and finally forced most of the history out of him, though I've been able to add a few details since. Carolaus was in no hurry to convert his find into money at once. He knew that, enormous as its intrinsic value was, a far higher, a terrific price could be obtained for it once its authenticity was established beyond doubt. Possibly he planned to do business with one of the modern descendants of the old order, the English order of St. John of Jerusalem, the Prussian Johanniterorden, or the Italian or German Langs of the Sovereign Order of Malta, all wealthy orders.
The fat man raised his glass, smiled at its emptiness, and rose to fill it and Spade's.
You begin to believe me a little?
He asked as he worked the siphon.
I haven't said I didn't.
No. Gutman chuckled.
But how you looked.
He sat down, drank generously, and patted his mouth with a white handkerchief.
Well, sir, to hold it safe while pursuing his researches into its history, Carolaus had re-enameled the bird, apparently just as it is now. 1 year to the very day after he acquired it. That was possibly 3 months after I'd made him confess to me. I picked up the Times in London and read that his establishment had been burglarized and him murdered. I was in Paris the next day.
He shook his head sadly.
The bird was gone. By gad, sir. I was wild. I didn't believe anybody else knew what it was. I didn't believe he had told anybody but me. A great quantity of stuff had been stolen. That made me think that the thief had simply taken the bird along with the rest of his plunder, not knowing what it was. Because I assure you that a thief who knew its value would not burden himself with anything else. No, sir. At least not anything less than crown jewels.
He shut his eyes and smiled complacently at an inner thought. He opened his eyes and said,
That was 17 years ago. Well, sir, it took me 17 years to locate that bird, but I did find it. I wanted it, and I'm not a man that's easily discouraged when he wants something.
His smile grew broad.
I wanted it, and I found it. I want it, and I'm going to have it.
He drained his glass, dried his lips again, and returned his handkerchief to his pocket.
I traced it to the home of a Russian general, one Kemedov, in a Constantinople suburb. He didn't know a thing about it. It was nothing but a black enameled figure to him, but his natural contrariness, the natural contrariness of a Russian general, kept him from selling it to me when I made him an offer. Perhaps in my eagerness I was a little unskillful, though not very. I don't know about that. But I did know I wanted it, and I was afraid this stupid soldier might begin to investigate his property, might chip off some of the enamel. So I sent some, agents to get it. Well, sir, they got it, and I haven't got it.
He stood up and carried his empty glass to the table.
But I'm going to get it. Your glass, sir. Then the bird doesn't belong to any of you?
Spade asked.
But to a General Kemedov.
Belong, the fat man said jovially.
Well, sir, you might say it belonged to the King of Spain, but I don't see how you can honestly grant anybody else clear title to it, except by right of possession. He clucked. An article of that value that has passed from hand to hand by such means is clearly the property of whoever can get hold of it. Then it's Miss O'Shaughnessy's now. No, sir, except as my agent.
Spade said,
Oh.
ironically. Gutman, looking thoughtfully at the stopper of the whiskey bottle in his hand, asked,
There's no doubt she's got it now. Not much. Where? I don't know exactly.
The fat man set the bottle on the table with a bang.
But you said you did, he protested.
Spade made a careless gesture with one hand.
I meant to say I know where to get it when the time comes.
The pink bulbs of Gutman's face arranged themselves more happily.
And you do?
He asked.
Yes. Where?
Spade grinned and said,
Leave that to me. That's my end. When? When I'm ready.
The fat man pursed his lips and, smiling with only slight uneasiness, asked,
Mr. Spade, where is Miss O'Shaughnessy now? In my hands, safely tucked away.
Gutman smiled with approval.
Trust you for that, sir,
he said.
Well now, sir, before we sit down to talk prices, answer me this. How soon can you, or how soon are you willing to produce the Falcon? Couple of days.
The fat man nodded.
That is satisfactory. But I forgot our nourishment.
He turned to the table, poured whiskey, squirted charged water into it, set a glass at Spade's elbow, and held his own aloft.
Well, sir, here's to a fair bargain and profits large enough for both of us.
They drank. The fat man sat down. Spade asked,
What's your idea of a fair bargain?
Gutman held his glass up to the light, looked affectionately at it, took another long drink, and said,
I have two proposals to make, sir, and either is fair. Take your choice. I will give you $25,000 when you deliver the Falcon to me, and another $25,000 as soon as I get to New York. Or I will give you 1/4 25%. I will give you 1/4 25% of what I realize on the Falcon. There you are, sir. An almost immediate $50,000, or a vastly greater sum within, say, a couple of months.
Spade drank and asked,
How much greater? Vastly.
The fat man repeated.
Who knows how much greater? Shall I say 100,000 or 250,000? Will you believe me if I name the sum that seems the probable minimum? Why not?
The fat man smacked his lips and lowered his voice to a purring murmur.
What would you say, sir, to 500,000?
Spade narrowed his eyes.
Then you think the dingus is worth 2 million?
Gutman smiled serenely.
In your own words, why not?
He asked. Spade emptied his glass and set it on the table. He put his cigar in his mouth, took it out, looked at it, and put it back in. His yellow-gray eyes were faintly muddy. He said,
That's a hell of a lot of dough.
The fat man agreed.
That's a hell of a lot of dough.
He leaned forward and patted Spade's knee.
That is the absolute rock-bottom minimum. Or Karolaus Constantinides was a blithering idiot, and he wasn't.
Spade removed the cigar from his mouth again, frowned at it with distaste, and put it on the smoking stand. He shut his eyes hard, opened them again. Their muddiness had thickened. He said,
The minimum, huh? And the maximum?
An unmistakable sh followed the X in maximum as he said it.
The maximum?
Gutman held his empty hand out, palm up.
I refuse to guess. You think me crazy. I don't know. There's no telling how high it could go, sir, and that's the one and only truth about it.
Spade pulled his sagging lower lip tight against the upper. He shook his head impatiently. A sharp, frightened gleam awoke in his eyes, and was smothered by the deepening muddiness. He stood up, helping himself up with his hands on the arm of his chair. He shook his head again and took an uncertain step forward. He laughed thickly and muttered, "God damn you." Gutman jumped up and pushed his chair back. His fat globes jiggled. His eyes were dark holes in an oily, pink face. Spade swung his head from side to side until his dull eyes were pointed at, if not focused on, the door. He took another uncertain step. The fat man called sharply,
"Wilma!"
A door opened and the boy came in. Spade took a third step. His face was gray now, with jaw muscles standing out like tumors under his ears. His legs did not straighten again after his fourth step, and his muddy eyes were almost covered by their lids. He took his fifth step. The boy walked over and stood close to Spade, a little in front of him, but not directly between Spade and the door. The boy's right hand was inside his coat, over his heart. The corners of his mouth twitched. Spade essayed his sixth step. The boy's leg darted out across Spade's leg, in front. Spade tripped over the interfering leg and crashed face down on the floor. The boy, keeping his right hand under his coat, looked down at Spade. Spade tried to get up. The boy drew his right foot far back and kicked Spade's temple. The kick rolled Spade over on his side. Once more, he tried to get up, could not, and went to sleep. End of chapter 13. Welcome in, Questia. No need to apologize. I'm glad you're here. So, for those of you counting at home, Spade has had 4 or maybe 5 alcoholic drinks, one of which may have been messed with considering his bleary nature by the end there, 2 cigars, and 4 cigarettes. For those of you playing the drinking game, please stop at this point. Let's see. So, Gutman has speculated that the bird is worth at about $2 million at minimum, which, let me see that real quick. If we go to 1930, the date that the book was published, something for $2 million at minimum in 1930 money, 95 years later, which is, wait, no, that's 2026 now. Okay. So, something at a minimum of $2 million in 1930 money is now worth approximately $38.5 million. That's a hell of a lot of money. If you ask me, I think that's a hell of a bird. Hell of a lot of bird. Alright, I'm going to get some water real quick before I come back. And we'll do chapter 14. welcome back. Alright, so, 2 more chapters for today. Chat hydrate as well, sprays chat with a hose. Alright. Chapter 14, La Paloma. Spade, coming around the corner from the elevator at a few minutes past 6 in the morning, saw yellow light glowing through the frosted glass of his office door. He halted abruptly, set his lips together, looked up and down the corridor, and advanced to the door with swift, quiet strides. He put his hand on the knob and turned it with care that permitted neither rattle nor click. He turned the knob until it would turn no farther. The door was locked. Holding the knob still, he changed hands, taking it now in his left hand. With his right hand, he brought the keys out of his pocket, carefully, so they could not jingle against one another. He separated the office key from the others and, smothering the others together in his palm, inserted the office key in the lock. The insertion was soundless. He balanced himself on the balls of his feet, filled his lungs, clicked the door open, and went in. Effie Perrin sat sleeping with her head on her forearms on her desk. She wore her coat and had one of Spade's overcoats wrapped cape fashion around her. Spade blew his breath out in a muffled laugh, shut the door behind him, and crossed to the inner door. The inner office was empty. He went over to the girl and put a hand on her shoulder. She stirred, raised her head drowsily, and her eyelids fluttered. Suddenly, she sat up straight, opening her eyes wide. She saw Spade, smiled, leaned back in her chair, and rubbed her eyes with her fingers. So you finally got back, she said. What time is it?
6 o'clock. What are you doing here?
She shivered, drew Spade's overcoat closer around her, and yawned. You told me to stay here till you got back or phoned.
Oh, you're the sister of the boy who stood on the burning deck.
I wasn't going to... She broke off and stood up, letting his coat slide down on the chair behind her. She looked with dark, excited eyes at his temple under the brim of his hat and exclaimed, Oh, your head! What happened? His right temple was dark and swollen.
I don't know whether I fell or was slugged. I don't think it amounts to much, but it hurts like hell.
He barely touched it with his fingertips. Flinched, turned his grimace into a grim smile, and explained,
I went visiting, was fed knockout drops, and came to 12 hours later, all spread out on a man's floor.
She reached up and removed his hat from his head. It's terrible, she said. You'll have to get a doctor. You can't walk around with a head like that.
It's not as bad as it looks, except for the headache, and that might be mostly from the drops.
He went to the cabinet in the corner of the office and ran cold water on a handkerchief.
Anything turn up after I left?
Did you find Miss O'Shaughnessy, Sam?
Not yet. Anything turn up after I left?
The district's attorney office phone. He wants to see you.
Himself?
Yes, that's the way I understood it. And a boy came in with a message that Mr. Gutman would be delighted to talk to you before 5:30. Spade turned off the water, squeezed the handkerchief, and came away from the cabinet, holding the handkerchief to his temple.
I got that,
he said.
I met the boy downstairs, and talking to Mr. Gutman got me this.
Is that the G who phoned, Sam?
Yes.
And what? Spade stared through the girl and spoke as if using speech to arrange his thoughts.
He wants something he thinks I can get. I persuaded him I could keep him from getting it if he didn't make the deal with me before 5:30. Then, sure. It was after I told him he'd have to wait a couple of days that he fed me the junk. It's not likely he thought I'd die. He'd know I'd be up and around in 10 or 12 hours. So maybe the answer is that he figured he could get it without my help in that time if I was fixed, so I couldn't butt in. He scowled. I hope to Christ he was wrong.
His stare became less distant.
You didn't get any word from the O'Shaughnessy?
The girl shook her head no and asked, Has this got anything to do with her?
Something.
This thing he wants belongs to her?
Or to the King of Spain. Sweetheart, you've got an uncle who teaches history or something over at the university?
A cousin? Why?
If we brightened his life with an alleged historical secret 4 centuries old, could we trust him to keep it dark a while?
Oh yes, he's good people.
Fine, get your pencil and book.
She got them and sat in her chair. Spade ran more cold water on his handkerchief and, holding it to his temple, stood in front of her and dictated the story of the Falcon as he had heard it from Gutman, from Charles V's grant to the Hospitallers up to, but no further than, the enameled bird's arrival in Paris at the time of the Carlist influx. He stumbled over the names of authors and their works that Gutman had mentioned, but managed to achieve some sort of phonetic likeness. The rest of the history he repeated with the accuracy of a trained interviewer. When he finished, the girl shut her notebook and raised a flushed, smiling face to him. Oh, isn't this thrilling? She said. It's...
Yes, or ridiculous. Now, will you take it over and read it to your cousin and ask him what he thinks of it? Has he ever run across anything that might have some connection with it? Is it probable? Is it possible? Even barely possible? Or is it the bunk? If he wants more time to look it up, okay, but get some sort of opinion out of him now. And for God's sake, make him keep it under his hat.
I'll go right now, she said. And you go see a doctor about that head.
We'll have breakfast first.
No, I'll eat over it in Berkeley. I can't wait to hear what Ted thinks of this.
Well,
Spade said.
Don't start boo-hooing if he laughs at you.
After a leisurely breakfast at the palace, during which he read both morning papers, Spade went home, shaved, bathed, rubbed ice on his bruised temple, and put on fresh clothes. He went to Bridget O'Shaughnessy's apartment at the Coronet. Nobody was in the apartment. Nothing had been changed in it since his last visit. He went to the Alexandria Hotel. Gutman was not in. None of the other occupants of Gutman's suite was in. Spade learned that these other occupants were the fat man's secretary, Wilmer Cook, and his daughter Rhea, a brown-eyed, fair-haired, smallish girl of 17, whom the hotel staff said was beautiful. Spade was told that the Gutman party had arrived at the hotel from New York 10 days before and had not checked out. Spade went to the Belvedere and found the hotel detective eating in the hotel cafe.
Morning, Sam. Sit down and bite an egg.
The hotel detective stared at Spade's temple.
By God, someone maced you plenty. Thanks, I've had mine.
Spade said as he sat down, and then referring to his temple,
It looks worse than it is. That was my Cairo's conduct. He went out not more than a half hour behind you yesterday, and I ain't seen him since. He didn't sleep here again last night. He's getting bad habits. Well, a fellow like that alone in a big city. Who put the slug to you, Sam? It wasn't Cairo.
Spade looked attentively at the small silver dome covering Luke's toast.
How's the chances of giving his room a casing while he's out? Can do. You know I'm willing to go all the way with you all the time.
Luke pushed his coffee back, put his elbows on the table, and screwed up his eyes at Spade.
But I got a hunch you ain't going all the way with me. What's the honest to God on this guy, Sam? You don't have to kick back on me. You know I'm regular.
Spade lifted his eyes from the silver dome. They were clear and candid.
Sure you are,
he said.
I'm not holding out. I gave it to you straight. I'm doing a job for him, but he's got some friends that look wrong to me, and I'm a little leery of him.
Kid we chased out yesterday was one of his friends.
Yes, Luke, he was. And it was one of them that shoved Miles across.
Spade shook his head.
Thursby killed Miles. And who killed him?
Spade smiled.
That's supposed to be a secret, but confidentially, I did,
he said.
According to the police.
Luke grunted and stood up, saying,
You're a tough one to figure out, Sam. Come on, we'll have that look-see.
They stopped at the desk long enough for Luke to fix it so we'll get a ring if he comes in, and went up to Cairo's room. Cairo's bed was smooth and trim, but paper in the weight. But paper in the wastebasket, unevenly drawn blinds, and a couple of rumpled towels in the bathroom showed that the chambermaid had not yet been in that morning. Cairo's luggage consisted of a square trunk, a valise, and a Gladstone bag. His bathroom cabinet was stocked with cosmetics, boxes, cans, jars, and bottles of powders, creams, unguents, perfumes, lotions, and tonics. 2 suits and an overcoat hung in the closet over 3 pairs of carefully treed shoes. The valise and smaller bag were unlocked. Luke had the trunk unlocked by the time Spade had finished searching elsewhere.
Blank so far,
Spade said as they dug down into the trunk. They found nothing there to interest them.
Any particular thing we're supposed to be looking for?
Luke asked as he locked the trunk again.
No, he's supposed to have come here from Constantinople. I'd like to know if he did. Haven't seen anything that says he didn't. What's his racket?
Spade shook his head.
Something else I'd like to know.
He crossed the room and bent down over the wastebasket.
Well, this is our last shot.
He took a newspaper from the basket. His eyes brightened when he saw it was the previous day's call. It was folded with the classified advertising page outside. He opened it, examined that page, and nothing there stopped his eyes. He turned the paper over and looked at the page that had been folded inside, the page that held financial and shipping news, the weather, births, marriages, divorces, and deaths. From the lower left-hand corner, a little more than 2 inches of the bottom of the second column had been torn out. Immediately above the tear was a small caption, "Arrived today," followed by 12:20 a.m. Kepak from Astoria, 5:05 a.m. Helen P. Drew from Greenwood, 5:06 a.m. Alvarado from Bandon. The tear passed through the next line, leaving only enough of its letters to make "from Sydney" inferable. Spade put the call down on the desk and looked into the wastebasket again. He found a small piece of wrapping paper, a piece of string, 2 hosiery bags, a haberdasher's sale ticket for 6 pairs of socks, and in the bottom of the basket a piece of newspaper rolled into a tiny ball. He opened the ball carefully, smoothed it out onto the desk, and fitted it into the torn part of the call. The fit at the sides was exact, but between the top of the crumpled fragment and the inferable "from Sydney," 1/2 inch was missing. Sufficient space to have held announcement of 6 or 7 boats' arrival. He turned the sheet over and saw that the other side of the missing portion could have held only a meaningless corner of a stockbroker's advertisement. Luke, leaning over his shoulder, asked,
"What's this all about?" "Looks like the gent's interested in a boat." "Well, there's no law against that. Or is there?"
Luke said while Spade was folding the torn page and the crumpled fragment together and putting them into his coat pocket.
"You all through here now?" "Yes. Thanks a lot, Luke. Will you give me a ring as soon as he comes in?"
"Sure." Spade went to the business office of the Call, bought a copy of the previous day's issue, opened it to the shipping news page, and compared it with the page taken from Cairo's wastebasket. The missing portion had read, 5:17 a.m., Tahiti from Sydney and Papeete, 6:05 a.m., Admiral Peoples from Astoria, 8:07 a.m., Cattle Peak from San Pedro, 8:17 a.m., Silverado from San Pedro, 8:05 a.m., La Paloma from Hong Kong, 9:03 a.m., Daisy Gray from Seattle. He read the list slowly, and when he had finished, he underscored Hong Kong with a fingernail, cut the list of arrivals from the paper with his pocket knife, put the rest of the paper and Cairo's sheet into the wastebasket, and returned to his office. He sat down at his desk, looked up a number in the telephone book, and used the telephone.
Kearney 141, please. Where is the Paloma, in from Hong Kong yesterday morning, docked?
He repeated the question.
Thanks.
He held the receiver hook down with his thumb for a moment, released it, and said,
Davenport 2020, please. Detective Bureau, please. Is Sergeant Polehouse there? Thanks. Hello, Tom. This is Sam Spade. Yes, I tried to get you yesterday afternoon. Sure, suppose you go lunch with me. Right.
He kept the receiver to his ear while his thumb worked the hook again.
Davenport 0170, please. Hello, this is Samuel Spade. My secretary got a phone message yesterday that Mr. Bryan wanted to see me. Will you ask him what time's the most convenient for him? Yes, Spade. S-P-A-D-E.
A long pause.
Yes. 2:30? All right. Thanks.
He called a fifth number and said,
Hello, darling. Let me talk to Sid. Hello, Sid. Sam. I've got a date with the district attorney at 2:30 this afternoon. Will you give me a ring here or there around 4 just to see that I'm not in trouble? Hell with your Saturday afternoon golf. Your job's to keep me out of jail. Right, Sid. Bye.
He pushed the telephone away, yawned, stretched, felt his bruised temple, looked at his watch, and rolled and lighted a cigarette. He smoked sleepily until Effie Perrin came in. Effie Perrin came in smiling, bright-eyed and rosy-faced. "Ted says it could be," she reported. "And he hopes it is. He says that he's not a specialist in that field, but the names and dates are all right, and at least none of your authorities or their works are out-and-out fakes. He's all excited over it."
That's swell, as long as he doesn't get too enthusiastic to see through it if it's phony.
"Oh, he wouldn't, not Ted. He's too good at this stuff for that."
Uh-huh. The whole damn Perrin family's wonderful.
Spade said.
Including you and the smudge of soot on your nose.
He's not a Perrin, he's a Christie." She bent her head to look at her nose in the vanity case mirror. "Oh, I must have got that from the fire." She scrubbed the smudge with the corner of a handkerchief.
The Perrin Christie enthusiasm ignite Berkeley?
He asked. She made a face at him while patting her nose with a powdered pink disc. "There was a boat on fire when I came back. They were towing it out from the pier, and the smoke blew all over our ferry boat." Spade put his hands on the arms of his chair.
Were you near enough to see the name of the boat?
He asked. "Yes, La Paloma. Why?"
Spade smiled ruefully. "Damned if I know why, sister," he said.
And that's the end of chapter 14. Yay, we had a lead. Never mind. Ignore the meowing. Ignore it. Okay, so for those keeping track at home, that is now 5 cigarettes. I hope nobody's playing the drinking game. Alright, one more chapter for today. Chapter 15. Every Crackpot. Spade and Detective Sergeant Polehouse ate pickled pig's feet at one of the Big John's tables at the state's Hofbrau. Polehouse, balancing pale, bright jelly on a fork halfway between plate and mouth, said, "Hey, listen, Sam. Forget about the other night. He was dead wrong, but you know anybody's liable to lose their head if you ride them that way. Spade looked thoughtfully at the police detective.
Was that what you wanted to see me about?
He asked. Polehouse nodded, put the fork full of jelly into his mouth, swallowed it, and qualified his nod. Mostly.
Dundee send you?
Polehouse made a disgusted mouth. You know he didn't. He's as bullheaded as you are. Spade smiled and shook his head.
No, he's not, Tom,
he said.
He just thinks he is.
Tom scowled and chopped at his pig's foot with a knife. Ain't you ever gonna grow up? He grumbled. What have you got to beef about? He didn't hurt you. You came out on top. What's the sense of making a grudge of it? You're just making a lot of grief for yourself. Spade placed his knife and fork carefully together on his plate and put his hands on the table beside his plate. His smile was faint and devoid of warmth.
With every bull in town working overtime trying to pile up grief from me, a little more won't hurt. I won't even know it's there.
Polehouse's ruddiness deepened. He said, well, that's a swell thing to say to me. Spade picked up his knife and fork and began to eat. Polehouse ate. Presently, Spade asked,
See the boat on fire in the bay?
I saw the smoke. Be reasonable, Sam. Dundee was wrong and he knows it. Why don't you let it go at that?
Think I ought to go around and tell him I hope my chin didn't hurt his fist.
Polehouse cut savagely into the pig's foot. Spade said,
Phil Archer been in with any more hot tips?
Oh, hell. Dundee didn't think you shot Miles, but what else could he do except run the lead down? You've done the same thing in his place, and you know it.
Yes.
Malice glittered in Spade's eyes.
What made him think I didn't do it? What makes you think I didn't? Or don't you?
Polehouse's ruddy face flushed again. He said, Thursby shot Miles.
You think he did?
He did. That Webley was his, and the slug in Miles came out of it.
Sure?
Spade demanded. Dead sure. The police detective replied. We got a hold of it. A hold of a kid, a bellhop at Thursby's hotel, that had seen it in his room just that morning. He noticed it particular because he never saw one just like it before. I never saw one. You say they don't make 'em anymore. It ain't likely there'd be another around, and anyway, if that wasn't Thursby's, what happened to his? And that's the gun the slug in Miles come out of. He started to put a piece of bread into his mouth, withdrew it, and asked, You say you've seen them before. Where was that at? He put the bread into his mouth.
In England, before the war.
Sure, there you are. Spade nodded and said,
Then that leaves Thursby the only one I killed.
Polehouse squirmed in his chair, and his face was red and shiny. Christ's sake, ain't you never gonna forget that? He complained earnestly. That's out. You know it as well as I do. You'd think you wasn't a dick yourself the way you bellyache over things. I suppose you don't ever pull the same stuff on anybody than we pulled on you.
You mean that you tried to pull on me, Tom. Just tried.
Polehouse swore under his breath and attacked the remainder of his pig's foot.
Spade said, All right, you know it's out and I know it's out. What does Dundee know?
He knows it's out.
What woke him up?
Sam. He never really thought you'd... Spade's smile checked Polehouse. He left the sentence incomplete and said, We dug up a record on Thursby.
Yes? Who was he?
Polehouse's shrewd, small brown eyes studied Spade's face. Spade exclaimed irritably,
I wish to God I knew half as much about this business as you smart guys think I do.
I wish we all did, Polehouse grumbled. Well, he was a St. Louis gunman the first we hear of him. He was picked up a lot of times back there for this and that, but he belonged to the Egan mob, so nothing much was ever done about any of it. I don't know how come he left that shelter, but they got him once in New York for knocking over a row of stuss games. His twist turned him up, and he was in a year before Fallon got him sprung. Couple of years later, and didn't have any trouble getting out whenever he happened to get in. That was when Dixie was almost as big a shot as Nick the Greek in Chicago gambling. This Thursby was Dixie's bodyguard, and he took the run out with him when Dixie got in wrong with the rest of the boys. Over some debts he couldn't or wouldn't pay off. It was a couple of years back, about the time the Newport Beach boating club was shut up. I don't know if Dixie had any part in that. Anyways, this is the first time him or Thursby's been seen since.
Dixie's been seen?
Spade asked. Polehouse shook his head. No. His small eyes became sharp, prying. Not unless you've seen him, or know if somebody's seen him. Spade lounged back in his chair and began to make a cigarette.
I haven't,
he said mildly.
This is all new stuff to me.
Oh, I missed a line. I'm so sorry. I'm gonna go back real quick. Let's see. I don't know how come he left that shelter, but they got him once in New York for knocking over a row of Stuss games. His twist turned him up, and he was in a year before Fallon got him sprung. A couple of years later, he did a short hitch in Joliet for pistol whipping another twist that had given him the needle. But after that, he took up with Dixie Monahan and didn't have any trouble getting out whenever he happened to get in. That was when Dixie was almost as big a shot as Nick the Greek in Chicago gambling. This Thursby was Dixie's bodyguard, and he took the run out with him when Dixie got in wrong with the rest of the boys over some debts he couldn't or wouldn't pay off. That was a couple of years back, about the time the Newport Beach boating club was shut up. I don't know if Dixie had any part in that. Anyway, this is the first time him or Thursby's been seen since.
Dixie's been seen?
Spade asked. Polehouse shook his head. No. His small eyes became sharp, prying. Not unless you've seen him or know somebody's seen him. Spade lounged back in his chair and began to make a cigarette.
I haven't,
he said mildly.
This is all new stuff to me.
I guess it is. Polehouse snorted. Spade grinned at him and asked,
Where'd you pick up all this news about Thursby?
Some of it's in the records. The rest, well, we got it here and there.
From Cairo, for instance.
Now Spade's eyes held the prying gleam. Polehouse put down his coffee cup and shook his head. Not a word of it. You poisoned that guy for us.
Spade laughed. You mean a couple of high-class sleuths like you and Dundee worked on that lily of the valley all night and couldn't crack him?
What do you mean all night? Polehouse protested. We worked on him for less than a couple of hours. We saw we wasn't getting nowhere and let him go. Spade laughed again and looked at his watch. He caught John's eye and asked for the check.
I've got a date with the DA this afternoon,
he told Polehouse while they waited for his change. He sent for you?
Yes.
Polehouse pushed his chair back and stood up, a barrel-bellied tall man, solid and phlegmatic. You won't be doing me any favor, he said, by telling him I've talked to you like this. A lathy youth with salient ears ushered Spade into the district attorney's office. Spade went in smiling easily, saying easily,
Hello, Brian.
District Attorney Brian stood up and held his hand out across his desk. He was a blond man of medium stature, perhaps 45 years old, with aggressive blue eyes behind black-ribboned nose glasses, the overlarge mouth of an orator, and a wide, dimpled chin.
When he said, How do you do, Spade?
His voice was resonant with latent power. They shook hands and sat down. The district attorney put his finger on one of the pearl buttons in a battery of 4 on his desk, said to the lathy youth who opened the door, asking, again,
Ask Mr. Thomas and Healy to come in.
And then, rocking back in his chair, addressed Spade pleasantly.
You and the police haven't been hitting it off so well, have you?
Spade made a negligent gesture with the fingers of his right hand.
Nothing serious,
he said lightly.
Dundee gets too enthusiastic.
The door opened to admit 2 men. The one to whom Spade said,
Hello, Thomas,
was a sunburnt, stocky man of 30 in clothing and hair of a kindred unruliness. He clapped Spade on the shoulder with a freckled hand, asked, How's tricks? And sat down beside him. The second man was younger and colorless. He took a seat a little apart from the others and balanced a stenographer's notebook on his knee, holding a green pencil over it. Spade glanced his way, chuckled, and asked Brian,
Anything I say will be used against me?
The district attorney smiled.
That always holds good.
He took his glasses off, looked at them, and set them on his nose again. He looked through them at Spade and asked,
Who killed Thursby?
Spade said,
I don't know.
Brian rubbed his black eyeglass ribbon between thumb and fingers and said knowingly,
Perhaps you don't, but you certainly could make an excellent guess. Maybe, but I wouldn't.
The district attorney raised his eyebrows.
I wouldn't,
Spade repeated. He was serene.
My guess might be excellent, or it might be crummy. But Mrs. Spade didn't raise any children dippy enough to make guesses in front of a district attorney, an assistant district attorney, and a stenographer. Why shouldn't you, if you've nothing to conceal? Everybody, Spade responded mildly, has something to conceal. And you have? My guesses, for one thing.
The district attorney looked down at his desk and then up at Spade. He settled his glasses more firmly on his nose. He said,
If you'd prefer not having the stenographer here, we can dismiss him. It was simply as a matter of convenience that I brought him in. I don't mind him a damn bit,
Spade replied.
I'm willing to have anything I say put down, and I'm willing to sign it. We don't intend asking you to sign anything,
Brian assured him.
I wish you wouldn't regard this as a formal inquiry at all, and please don't think I've any belief, much less confidence, in those theories the police seem to have formed. No, not a particle.
Spade sighed and crossed his legs.
I'm glad of that.
He felt in his pockets for tobacco and papers.
What's your theory?
Brian leaned forward in his chair, and his eyes were hard and shiny as the lenses over them.
Tell me who Archer was shadowing Thursby for, and I'll tell you who killed Thursby.
Spade's laugh was brief and scornful.
You're as wrong as Dundee,
he said.
Don't misunderstand me, Spade,
Brian said, knocking on the desk with his knuckles.
I don't say your client killed Thursby or had him killed, but I do say that, knowing who your client is or was, I'll mighty soon know who killed Thursby.
Spade lighted his cigarette, removed it from his lips, emptied his lungs of smoke, and spoke as if puzzled.
I don't exactly get that. You don't? Then suppose I put it this way. Where is Dixie Monahan?
Spade's face retained its puzzled look.
Putting it that way doesn't help much,
he said.
I still don't get it.
The district attorney took his glasses off and shook them for emphasis. He said,
We know Thursby was Monahan's bodyguard and went with him when Monahan found it wise to vanish from Chicago. We know Monahan welched on something like $200,000 worth of bets when he vanished. We don't know, not yet, who his creditors were.
He put the glasses on again and smiled grimly.
But we all know what's likely to happen to a gambler who welches and to his bodyguard when his creditors find him. It's happened before.
Spade ran his tongue over his lips and pulled his lips back over his teeth in an ugly grin. His eyes glittered under pulled-down brows. His reddening neck bulged over the rim of his collar. His voice was low and hoarse and passionate.
Well, what do you think? Did I kill him for his creditors? Or just find them and let them do their own killing? No,
the district attorney protested.
You misunderstand me. I hope to Christ I do,
Spade said.
He didn't mean that,
Thomas said.
Then what did he mean?
Brian waved a hand.
I only mean that you might have been involved in it without knowing what it was. That could...
I see, Spade sneered.
You don't think I'm naughty. You just think I'm dumb. Nonsense, Brian insisted. Suppose someone came to you and engaged you to find Monahan, telling you they had reasons for thinking he was in the city. This someone might give you a completely false story. Any one of a dozen or more would do. Or might say he was a debtor who had run away without giving you any of the details. How could you tell what was behind it? How would you know it wasn't an ordinary piece of detective work? And under those circumstances, you certainly couldn't be held responsible for your part in it unless.
His voice sank to a more impressive key, and his words came out spaced and distinct.
You made yourself an accomplice by concealing your knowledge of the murderer's identity or information that would lead to his apprehension.
Anger was leaving Spade's face. No anger remained in his voice when he asked,
That's what you meant? Precisely. All right, then there's no hard feelings. But you're wrong. Prove it.
Spade shook his head.
Can't prove it to you now. I can tell you. Then tell me. Nobody ever hired me to do anything about McDixie Monahan.
Brian and Thomas exchanged glances. Brian's eyes came back to Spade, and he said,
But, by your own admission, somebody did hire you to do something about his bodyguard, Thursby. Yes, about his ex-bodyguard, Thursby. Ex? Yes, ex. You know that Thursby was no longer associated with Monahan. You know that positively.
Spade stretched out his hand and dropped the stub of his cigarette into the ashtray on the desk. He spoke carelessly.
I don't know anything positively except that my client wasn't interested in Monahan, had never been interested in Monahan. I heard that Thursby took Monahan out to the Orient and lost him.
Again, the district attorney and his assistant exchanged glances. Thomas, in a tone whose matter-of-factness did not quite hide excitement, said,
That opens another angle. Monahan's friends could have knocked Thursby off for ditching Monahan. Dead gamblers don't have any friends,
Spade said.
It opens up two new lines,
Brian said. He leaned back and stared at the ceiling for several seconds, then sat upright quickly. His orator's face was alight.
It narrows down to three things. Number one, Thursby was killed by the gamblers Monahan had welched on in Chicago. Not knowing Thursby had sloughed Monahan, or not believing it, they killed him because he had been Monahan's associate, or to get him out of the way so they could get to Monahan, or because he had refused to lead them to Monahan. Number two, he was killed by friends of Monahan, or number three, he sold Monahan out to his enemies and then fell out with them and they killed him. Or number four,
Spade suggested with a cheerful smile,
he died of old age. You folks aren't serious, are you?
The two men stared at Spade, but neither of them spoke. Spade turned his smile from one to the other of them and shook his head in mock pity.
You've got Arnold Rothstein on the brain,
he said. Brian smacked the back of his left hand down into the palm of his right.
In one of those three categories lies the solution.
The power in his voice was no longer latent. His right hand, a fist except for protruding forefinger, went up and then down to stop with a jerk when the finger was leveled at Spade's chest.
And you can give us the information that will enable us to determine the category.
Spade said,
Yes?
Very lazily. His face was somber. He touched his lower lip with a finger, looked at the finger, and then scratched the back of his neck with it. Little irritable lines had appeared in his forehead. He blew his breath out heavily through his nose, and his voice was an ill-humored growl.
You wouldn't want the kind of information I could give you, Brian. You couldn't use it. It'd poop this gambler's revenge scenario for you.
Brian sat up straight and squared his shoulders. His voice was stern without blustering.
You are not the judge of that. Right or wrong, I am nonetheless the district attorney.
Spade's lifted lip showed his eye tooth.
I thought this was an informal talk. I am a sworn officer of the law 24 hours a day,
Brian said,
and neither formality nor informality justifies your withholding from me evidence of crime, except, of course,
he nodded meaningly,
on certain constitutional grounds. You mean if it might incriminate me?
Spade asked. His voice was placid, almost amused, but his face was not.
Well, I've got better grounds than that, or grounds that suit me better. My clients are entitled to a decent amount of secrecy. Maybe I can be made to talk to a grand jury, or even a coroner's jury, but I haven't been called before either yet, and it's a cinch I'm not going to advertise my client's business until I have to. Then again, you and the police have both accused me of being mixed up in the other night's murders. I've had trouble with both of you before. As far as I can see, my best chance of clearing myself of the trouble you're trying to make for me is by bringing in the murderers all tied up. And my only chance of ever catching them and tying them up and bringing them in is by keeping away from you and the police, because neither of you show any signs of knowing what in hell it's all about. He rose and turned his head over his shoulder to address the stenographer. Getting this all right, son, or am I going too fast for you? The stenographer looked at him with startled eyes and replied, "No, sir, I'm getting it all right." "Good work," Spade said and turned to Brian again. "Now, if you want to go to the board and tell them I'm obstructing justice and ask them to revoke my license, hop to it. You've tried it before, and it didn't get you anything but a good laugh all around." He picked up his hat. Brian began. "But look here," Spade said, "and I don't want any more of these informal talks. I've got nothing to tell you or the police, and I'm goddamn tired of being called things by every crackpot on the city payroll. If you want to see me, pinch me, or subpoena me, or something, and I'll come down with my lawyer." He put his hat on his head, said, "See you at the inquest, maybe," and stalked out. End of chapter 15. And that takes us to the end of today's sections. Next week, I will be finishing this up with chapters 16 to 20. So we got a 6th cigarette before the chapters were over. That's more than one per chapter. Good God. Six cigarettes, I think a total of 4 to 5 drinks, one of which was laced, and 2 cigars, all in the span of 2 days. That can't be healthy. Let's see. Next week, pretty much right now, I can tentatively say expect more of the same. A rehearsal stream, an Ace Attorney stream, and then finishing the Maltese Falcon. I will be practicing more of my accents, probably the same accents that I practiced this week. I'll probably just basically make just the date edits to the schedule from this week and then just have that out for you. But I'm gonna just double check my timetable, make sure everything lines up, and yeah, we'll probably just pick this up again next week. We'll be starting the 4th case of game 1 for Ace Attorney. Practice some accents before it starts, and then we'll finish up this story, and that'll probably wrap up January pretty nicely, and then we can go from there. After Maltese Falcon, I'll probably take a break from reading books for a little bit, since I've still got the Ace Attorney stuff to do. I'm pretty much going until the end of game 1 before I take a break from Ace Attorney for a while. So I'll have that as my reading thing. Maybe I'll do something else after this. I don't know. But you know what? February's coming up, so I'm looking ahead for that. There'll be some plans for that. Mostly, I'm probably going to shift focus to be thematic for the month, so it'll be more romance stuff or other sorts of
similar things. Like I said, I'm hashing it all out right now in my head and kind of just planning together with my manager the sort of things that I can do. So my January is wrapped up 1 week after January because finals. Oof. Well, you know what, Army? Best of luck to you. I know you've been studying hard. I know you've got this. And if you haven't necessarily been studying hard, if you're the type to just sort of wing it, then hey, you've got this. Chat, she's gonna read. No, I'm not reading that. You know, it'd be really funny at the end of this. It could Eldritch Entity shows up because of how plastered Spade is. Yeah, have a great rest of your day as well, Army. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you, Rainiacs and Langsters, for hanging out with me and listening to the story today. It was a lot of fun to read for you. Um, I look forward to seeing you again next week. Until then, um, I don't really have anything to really yap about today, so I think I'm just gonna go ahead and sign off now. But I am gonna miss you guys. Have a great rest of your weekend. Make sure to eat well, stay hydrated, and of course, get lots of good rest. Be kind to yourselves and be excellent to each other. Have a radiant rest of your day and your weekend, and I will see you next time. And of course, as always, remember, unshrimp yourselves. Take care, everybody, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.